All right, for arguably the most anticipated movie event of the year, only a full 5 months after the coveted Spider-Man No Way Home, I have assembled my own panel of Illuminati here in order to discuss whether this movie, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, actually measured up to the hype. I've got Luke from Luke Reviews, I've got Matt from Basic Entertainment, and back from the dead, at least before he goes back to that in order to finish up his school finals, Chris, the TV nerd Evenko, my longtime podcast co-host. Guys, you ready to do this?
Let's do it, man.
Awesome. Oh, man, seeing this panel brings back such good, warm, and fuzzy memories. People, welcome back to another episode of the Talking TV podcast. We are live here on Twitch on Sunday morning, the 8th of May. We're here to talk about arguably the most anticipated movie event of the year. It is finally here. We've been waiting about 5 months since the events of Spider-Man No Way Home officially brought the multiverse into live action after it had really only been hinted at in a couple of rather mediocre Disney Plus shows and one pretty awesome animated show, I will say. So this thing has been pretty freaking hyped up. You know, we've all been talking about Marvel arguably for the last decade. So there's absolutely like no surprises to what more than likely our opinions are going to be here. So before we get started, I wanted to go around the panel and I wanted to kind of gauge everyone's thought process, because this is one of those things where, once again, the internet provides a pretty consistent idea of things going into it. But on the flip side of it, you know, this is when things get interesting. This is when the reactions start to become a little bit more individual based. So starting with Luke, then going to Matt, then going to Chris. What was your anticipation level going into this movie, and what is it now that we're on the far side of it? Starting with Luke.
Well, the closer it got, the more it dropped, considering the reactions came out, and what I was hearing is like, he's good, but it's like, But I was like, okay, I'm just gonna enjoy it. But then as the movie went on, I thought, okay. But I tried to get myself excited on the day, and I sat down, and the Marvel Studios logo played, and then the movie happened.
Spoken like a true Luke. That's all I'm gonna say. Matt, your anticipation level going in and then coming out.
I've been following this movie for a while, of course, for all the Marvel movies, and just Multiverse of Madness. Then bringing in Sam Raimi, it was up. But then later on, for stuff in general with Marvel or just movies in general, my expectations have been lower for a lot of stuff. And going in here, hearing the reaction that they're kind of mixed, they actually went up pretty high, because just like all the other critics, when they talk, every movie is a 90%. This one was like a 70. I was like, oh, the critics might not like it. They might change it up and stuff. And I was like, I'm more excited for it. But my expectations for this movie was pretty low. It was checked.
Interesting. Yeah. So I feel like that's spoken like a true diehard Marvel and audience core member. The critics say something's bad, our ears perk up. We're like, oh, okay, there might actually be a chance. Chris, my longtime podcast co-host and famously fighting the good fight against the surge of Marvel lovers. Chris, you actually did like No Way Home for the most part. Didn't love it, but liked it. So now this is the next major movie. You know, we've had, surprisingly enough, only one Marvel TV show since then, and now we've actually got a big movie. So Chris, your thoughts going into and then coming out of Multiverse of Madness as far as the hype train goes?
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, let me just say it's like so good to be back. Even Honey's excited for me to be back. And
I thought I heard her barking before in the background.
She's pumped for me, man, because she knows how much I missed it, dude. Like, I won't even begin to lie when I say school's fun. It's just something that, I have to do. But this is something I want to do. So it's great to be back here with the Talking TV crew and, of course, our great panel of guests. And so one benefit of being so, encumbered with schoolwork and life and all that stuff lately has been I really haven't been on social media for like the better half of like a month and a few weeks.
So
really
jealous of you.
So I only ever knew about Krasinski being Mr. Fantastic.
Oh damn, so we're dropping spoilers right now. We're just getting that out of the way now. I love it. I love it.
Listen, this is Talking TV on Twitch, all right? We're not on that YouTube bullshit anymore.
Like Sunday,
this is the real.
I love it. Just get it out of the way right now.
So give us a follow if you want some real content, some real criticism you won't get anywhere else. But so I think, like, for me, I only ever thought that was like a rumor. I never knew it actually turned into anything. So I was like, oh shit, that's awesome. And then another spoiler, Patrick Stewart. I didn't see the trailers because I just didn't have time. So when I saw him, I was like, oh cool. So they actually did do that. Like I thought it was maybe, maybe not. All I heard going into this thing in advance was Feige being pissed off about how much they shared, which was another reason why I was like, honestly, I have so many finals at this point anyways. Why would I spend time on social media? And now I'm definitely not going to, because it means they did the thing that I've been saying since we started the show, which was I don't need to see the movie if I see the trailer. So I'm just going to go see the movie because I'd rather watch a movie than a trailer. And yeah, so my anticipation level was the same it always is with Marvel. I go in with them low, but I hope to be blown away. Point in case being one No Way Home. I thought it was really fun. I wasn't blown away, but it was really fun. But yeah, no, I mean, I actually did feel myself get excited as the days drew closer. We went and saw it last night, a friend of mine and myself, and like from about Thursday on, now it being Sunday, I was like, cool. I mean, I'm definitely craving just a night out in general to have fun for the first time in a while, but also like, yeah, let's go see this movie. I'm pretty pumped. So going into it, it was moderate as usual, but coming out of it, like I feel like I enjoyed my time with it. I think so far since No Way Home, the MCU is 2 for 2. Not saying they were groundbreaking films, but I had fun.
Yeah, indeed. And I think that's kind of where we're at as like longtime Marvel fans, I will say, because I've definitely noted a marked difference between the Marvel fans of the Infinity Saga versus the Marvel fans of now, like it's just getting to the point where it's like, okay, we're past the 10-year mark. We're pretty much past COVID. We're into whatever this new phase of Marvel is going to be. They're still kind of, doing their building blocks after getting all of like the delayed crap that we were unfortunately had to suffer through last year out of the way. And now we're actually getting into some more interesting material between this and then Moon Knight, which just dropped on Disney Plus, also hopefully providing a more interesting turn for the
Let me
Disney
just
Plus
say
show
I
as
haven't
well.
had a chance to see that yet. So
We'll keep that one. We'll keep that one spoiler.
I would appreciate that.
We'll keep that one spoiler heavy. Thanks for letting us know. That does help. So I'll walk you guys through kind of my reaction going into that, going into the movie and then coming out, and then I'll use that as like a transition period for kind of into our next couple points, which is where going into this movie, I remember seeing the first teaser that we had post Spider-Man and being really interested to be like, okay, so No Way Home, this isn't going to be the last time we see the multiverse. Obviously, it's in the title, the Multiverse of Madness, but we know how Marvel can like lie about stuff really easily. So I wasn't like getting super hyped for that. So basically when I heard it was going to be the Multiverse of Madness, I kind of was just like, okay, this is just going to be a thing. This is just going to be the next Doctor Strange movie. I'm like, whatever the case is, I'm like, okay, so I'm interested to see how after I thought a pretty mediocre first movie, they've been utilizing Doctor Strange in more of the team up movies rather than just immediately trying to launch him into his solo franchises. Doctor Strange was one of a couple characters they introduced late into the game in phase 3. So naturally they weren't going to really be able to dive into more of his solo movies until after the big team up movie, since at that point Infinity War and Endgame were just on the horizon. So I knew we were going to have to get past those two. And then he popped up in No Way Home, which I was not expecting. And I was like, okay, so they're going to use him as the whole catalyst in order to introduce, the multiverse and all the other previous Spider-Man elements. And then the first trailer comes out. And then I realized what this movie is actually going to be, which is I'm like, oh, okay, they're not doing a sequel to Doctor Strange anymore. They're using this as the next, let's call it Marvel gimmick, which is before it was all, the different characters and all the meetups and the character interactions and all that. And I'm like, and now it's the time for the cameos and the connecting to and making the last, not just 10 years of MCU content canon, but the last 20 years of non-MCU Marvel affiliated content canon. We knew about the purchase of 20th Century Fox and all that. Obviously, they've done their deal with Sony. So it's effectively, we are now, what this movie is this is the first real demonstration of what fans were going nuts about back in 2018 and 2019 when all of those murders went through, and the idea of seeing all of the major comic book characters that Marvel had to sell off, 20 years ago when they filed bankruptcy, now finally, getting them back together on screen. Does that necessarily make for a great movie experience? That I'm still trying to figure out. But all I'll say is that is kind of like, as far as like, kind of getting to like satisfy that portion of me where it's like, holy shit, we're actually going to get like a Doctor Strange movie with Professor X and Mr. Fantastic portrayed by Patrick Stewart and John Krasinski. Like Marvel has literally just become, like, to me, fan service. But once again, they're doing to me what it is that Chris and I actually discussed about a couple weeks ago, which is that they're doing fan service right, for lack of a better word. Like, I still don't
for the first time ever.
Yeah, but here's the thing. thing, right? It's Marvel is once again still able to do that to the point where it's like not detrimental to the story, at least to a certain extent. Like there were certain moments in this movie coming out where I'm like, okay, that was a member berry, and it's starting to get to the point where it's just feeling a little bit obnoxious. Versus Marvel's usually always done a good job of towing the line before. But I can just say that, like, as far as my initial reactions coming out of the movie before we start to break down more of the specific stuff, Chris, I love that you just ripped the Band-Aid off as far as just exposing the spoiler there. I'm like, okay, we're just getting right into that. Okay, is that this is probably the most amount of fun that I have had watching a Marvel movie since Avengers Endgame. You know, No Way Home was what it was, and I really, really had a good time with that, and that movie surprised the hell out of me. But in hindsight, I'm realizing now that my biggest flaw with that movie is they kind of need the extended Spider-Man elements to make that movie as good as it is, because without them, it just becomes another really, really terrible Tom Holland movie. Like the solo Tom Holland moments of that movie before we bring in Doctor Strange and the extended Spider-Man movies are just as bad, if not worse, as the first two Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, which are both not good at all. Far From Home, I've made it well known, is
even I disagree with that, Luke.
Bottom five
But,
MCU movie for me.
Dom,
But yeah,
real quick though,
yeah.
before we get too far away from it, because I do want to get into initial opinions and of course then start speaking specifics about the movie, but I think you just painted a great setup for the only topic I was going to bring if we were doing that today. And so I kind of want to go around and get everyone's thoughts on it. I'll let you guys know my thoughts first. See, I think the biggest issue with this film, from a marketing standpoint, from like a zeitgeist standpoint, while we're still sort of in that realm, is the way it was marketed. That they almost did a whole thing where like the multiverse was like a character, when really it's just a story about Doctor Strange wanting to find love and Wanda wanting to find love and the things they'll go through to do it. It's really, that's at its core. The multiverse is a conduit for helping them get there, but they made it seem like we were going to be bending realities. And you guys saw all the stupid YouTube videos, Deadpool showing up, and so and so Tom Cruise is going to be
all the one Tom Cruise, Superior Iron Man, Tobey Maguire, I even heard a rumor about Ben Affleck's Daredevil at one point, like all this Nicolas Cage's Ghost Rider, all that shit.
Because like I haven't, I mean, the few reviews I've seen, it's almost like no one's even left an opinion on this thing, where like no one really knows what to make of it. And I think a problem with that is the marketing. I still think people say this could be projection wise like the third highest grossing movie of the post-pandemic era, and it might actually hit $1 billion like a lot of people are saying with like the pre-sales and tickets. I read some of those articles. I always think that's fun, but I just think like the reception's been strange, because really instead of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I feel like this movie should have been called Doctor Strange in the Corporate Merger of Madness. Like because we got Patrick Stewart in that old school yellow X-Men thing, and he did the thing that we all remember from being young.
His finger too. He pointed his
and
finger.
he went into the Matrix.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, oh, cool. So now that's all potentially in game, and like, cool. So John Krasinski is Mr. Fantastic. So maybe him and Emily Blunt are going to be doing the thing in a future movie. This was like, it felt like Doctor Strange, but now we've set a bar so high. So let's just like show off all our new toys in the middle, all our new acquisitions in the middle. Then we'll get back to the movie. And I don't know. Like, I think that's like the biggest issue with this film from the marketing standpoint, is this emphasis on the subtitle. I think everyone was expecting it to be this crazy like Infinity War style journey, when it was really kind of just like a standalone film.
Yeah.
And I think that took away from it. But I thought it was a great, fun little standalone film. But little is the word. It's not as big as everyone thought it was going to be. What do you guys think?
I think that's so interesting that you bring that up, because I thought that was going to be something that really bothered me going in, but then in hindsight, I'm like, it actually really didn't bother me that much. In fact, if anything, it kind of made the movie better. I mean, I'll save my thoughts because like I've got a lot of thoughts specifically on the Illuminati section in general, but I'll save that for a little bit. What did you guys think about that?
Luke?
Well, yeah, I call it false advertising, like Multiverse of Madness, and there was about 3 and very little madness. If I knew that it was going to be like a more Doctor Strange thing, it's going to more lean into his feelings in that, and it could have leaned even more into that, and then you sell it as that, and you make Wanda the villain like properly, then you could have really had something. But I was expecting like world hopping, like oh, we're going to this one, oh no, can't go there, then just madness. But there was very little madness, and my expectations were high for how grand it was going to be, and it really wasn't.
Yeah, I think my biggest nitpick was that it's like, wow, so we had that one sequence of them bouncing through all the different universes at once before they finally landed in the 838 verse. And I'm like, oh, I think we got the Savage Land. I thought I heard like some Looney Tunes sound effects in the background there. And I'm like, damn, I'm like, is that some like potentially stepping on some intellectual property theft right there, Disney? You better be careful. Maybe.
See, Matt, I felt like there was more how do you say there was more like love story than there was like there was more magical rules in Spider-Man No Way Home when like Doctor Strange is telling Tom Holland's Peter Parker like be careful what you wish for or whatever, that whole scene where he's like because you can't come, like where was that was supposed to be this movie, am I wrong? Like what's your take on that?
It does play in more into the witchcraft and magic, which I love that they introduced. They really opened that realm. But talking about the marketing, listen, man, I wasn't expecting no Tom Cruise Iron Man. I wasn't expecting no Tobey Maguire. I wasn't really expecting them to even go to that many places. My expectations were low on the multiverse aspect. I was like, Marvel is not going to stop here with the multiverse. They're going to drag this out for the next 10 years, which they properly should for the story plots that they're building. I just wanted a Doctor Strange sequel. I mean, God, we haven't had a Doctor Strange sequel in 6 years. You know what I'm saying? And I want to see Raimi's take on Doctor Strange, who I think is so perfect for Doctor Strange. If I had to pick a director, he's the guy for it. I think he's more of he leans more into Doctor Strange than Spider-Man, if I'm being honest. And I also want to see a sequel of WandaVision. This was a sequel of WandaVision, Doctor Strange, and I'm glad it wasn't a sequel of the MCU.
That's a great point. That is
a good point. I do like that point.
Because if he Doctor Strange started to become a character that was like, I'm the fixer. I'm the guy. Okay, you come to me. I'm going to fix up. I need an event to kind of get my own sequel. I don't want that. Doctor Strange has his own standalone stories in the comics that are interesting and fun. Get some respect on Strange, especially after watching What If in that one episode. He was amazing in that.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point, because my whole thing with Doctor Strange in the MCU, Matt, is you're 100% right. Because after I thought a pretty mediocre standalone movie. I mean, don't get me wrong, Doctor Strange is not even the first Doctor Strange is not even the worst movie that we got in Phase 3. Captain Marvel much, but like the fact that like it kind of came in between like two of like arguably the best MCU movies for me, Civil War and then Guardians 2, and then all the craziness that came afterwards as a result of that. The first Spider-Man and Black Panther and Ragnarok, and then leading up to Infinity War. It almost felt like the first Doctor Strange kind of got forgotten, especially because they just immediately started inserting him into all these different group up movies. First with the cameo at the beginning of Ragnarok, and then the crucial part that he played in Infinity War, and then when he came back with everyone in Endgame, and then he's in No Way Home. It's almost like Doctor Strange as a character has been utilized so much, but it feels like we've seen him so little.
Yeah.
And it almost felt like, you're right, that almost factored into the marketing aspect, where people are so excited for the multiverse and so anticipating that they almost forget about the Doctor Strange elements, and then they're almost surprised when, crazily enough, the movie turns out to be a Doctor Strange movie, first and foremost. And strangely enough, Doctor Strange ended up being like one of my favorite parts, because I feel like what this movie did as far as on the Doctor Strange front correctly that I think the first one didn't, is the first one I felt like was trying to be like so indebted to the comics and so like, what's it called? And like paying such great homage to like the history and the origin of Doctor Strange that I felt like they almost forgot to like have fun with the movie. Like there were some incredible sequences in that first movie for sure, but like I felt like there was just so much that just got left on the cutting room table, and it felt like it was like a more generic version of Iron Man. And like my biggest complaint
it's a poorest man. Batman Begins. Iron Man.
Exactly. And the thing that people always ask me, what is it that I don't like about the first Doctor Strange? I'm like, it's because it's not fun. It's not a fun movie for me to watch. This was just my whole thing is I'm like, look, these movies are pitched as just being fun. They don't want me to think. They don't want me to have any sort of dire consequences. I've spent the last 5 years now complaining about how Marvel movies have no stakes. I'm sick of it. I'm tired. I just want to have fun with my
they
Marvel
never
movies.
wanted us to even finish the first Doctor Strange.
Yeah, clearly. Oh, I'm glad that you brought that up too. Because that's another great tidbit there. But yeah, like I had just so much goddamn fun with this movie. I understand all the problems. I understand that it's fast-paced. I understand that the entire Illuminati section is just more marketing for future movies. I understand all that, but like, look, I know all of that about Marvel at this point. I just wanted to have fun going into this movie, and I got all of that and more. This is the most fun that I've had this is the second most amount of fun that I've had in a theater so far this year since Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is just just an absolute joy to watch from start to finish.
So here, let's do this, because I kind of am curious everyone's thoughts. I kind of want to progress through the movie, do a first act, second act, third act little conversation, because I feel like there's a lot to talk about throughout each different act here, because never have I enjoyed a movie so much, recognizing that there are so many tonal and pacing differences and problems, but yet somehow it comes together where I walk out not complaining, but actually having a decent fun time. So it's really so what was the thing with this? Does anyone know the history here? Was there originally a director and then he left the film? And
the big thing is they were going to bring back the same team as the first one. They were going to bring back Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill, who I'll always know as Carlisle from Spill.com. You know, they had creative differences, whatever. You know how that always goes. Probably they were trying to make like something probably more in line with the first Doctor Strange movie. Marvel had already kind of moved on. So they ended up leaving. They brought on Michael Waldron, who's the showrunner for Loki, to rewrite this script. And then they bring on Sam Raimi to do more of the horror edge, because that's always been the confusing thing too, is they've always wanted to make Doctor Strange more of like a horror-centric movie, because famously Scott Derrickson, the director of the first Doctor Strange movie, also did the Sinister movie as well. And he's actually got another pretty interesting-looking horror movie called Black Phone with Ethan Hawke coming out later this year as well. So I find it interesting that with Doctor Strange, they've always wanted to take more of a horror edge, but it felt like this time with Sam Raimi, it's like they were almost tapping into the element that was like missing from the first movie, which was the horror element. You know, like they really went like all out with just the crazy, like the ghoulish designs and the more macabre looking.
It was almost a little Lovecraftian with that first little like,
yeah.
And the way that they like took the eyeball out of that initial like giant monster and like it just the pop sound. It was like
awesome. It was awesome.
It was like Tim Burton-y. It was like Lovecraftian.
Very, very Ray Harryhausen-esque.
So I felt Raimi throughout the entirety of the movie, which is why I say that. But I just think there are clearly some parts that felt more like it had, and I don't want to call him an arturist, but like for the sake of describing a director's touch, I'll just use that word. Like some parts of the film had more of like Sam Raimi's touch rather than other parts. And so the first act, it kind of, and we'll go around. I want everyone's thoughts on this as we go through the film, but I felt like it started off pretty generic. We're back in New York City again. It's the MCU. Everyone's hanging out. Doctor Strange is with Rachel McAdams, and he's a good guy. He goes to her wedding, even though they didn't work out, whatever. And so that just felt cool. It felt like your typical MCU standalone first act where we reestablish, we get reacquainted. It's been a little while. Let's get in. Let's establish some stakes. And then, intro action sequence that has no real consequence because this is how we do it. We're used to the formula, which is fine. I'm at this point, I'm done arguing against it. There's like 30 other podcasts you guys can go back and listen to.
Also, just the fact that it's like I feel like people in New York at this point should be so used to the idea of giant
they are. They're
monsters
taking their smartphones out now, and I love that. I thought that was great. I'm like, okay. So at this point, they're like not running away from danger to citizens.
They survived Thanos.
They're trying to go viral.
They survived getting snapped away for 5 years. These people are used to it. They're like, look, we got aliens, we got gods, we got. They just had a celestial pop up outside the Earth, like not even like a couple months ago. Like they're good. They're Gucci. They're used to it.
If anything, that's the piece of content no one's making about this movie that should be made. Like the way that the citizens of the MCU now are like trying to get that viral TikTok of Strange fighting
and how Christine's husband to be is also low-key a Doctor Strange fanboy, which I'm like, wow, of all the MCU heroes, the fact that you're a Doctor Strange fanboy, I feel like that should tell Christine something.
Yes, that's weird. Okay, that's weird. I'm glad we're on Twitch, not YouTube. Anyways,
yeah, right. So we're just skipping over the intro action sequence with America Chavez and the alternate Strange running and trying to get the Book of Ashanti, and then him absorbing her powers, even though that makes no sense, because if the monster that's chasing them is after Chavez's power to like traverse the multiverse, why the fuck would that version of Strange try to absorb her powers? Because then wouldn't it just be able to get her powers from him? I mean, it makes no difference because that Strange gets killed anyway in order to set up for I think it actually probably that's the other thing too I'll say about this movie. This movie probably has the greatest use of the Chekhov's gun technique that I've ever seen in a movie, like recently, like ever.
It was really good. Yeah. So I mean, I felt like the first act was a little normal, a little generic, but it had like the touch of where we were going, and that was cool. Like the first act, it hooked me. Honestly, it got me into the world. I still think that this relationship between Rachel McAdams and Stephen Strange Cumberbatch is just what the last one was 2016. Who the fuck remembers that?
Yeah.
Like just drop it. It doesn't matter that much.
A lot that happened since then.
Or hint at it throughout other movies, because this really is a love story. Let's be honest. This is about parental love. This is about Chavez loving her parents and not being able to get back to them. And this is about Doctor Strange and Rachel McAdams and whatever. But I mean, that felt weak. But it was a pretty generic, easy to get into first act. But so I have no complaints there. But what about you guys? Like, did this movie hook you right away? What are your takes on the first act?
It definitely hooked me with how it began, because it's like, oh, we're just right in it. It's kind of like, I like the idea how it's like this movie, in the context of the MCU, kind of doesn't make sense with the multiverse, especially No Way Home. No Way Home doesn't even feel like even happened in this universe. I can understand that, Sony being Sony, Marvel being Marvel, but I like how it picked it up right from the beginning. It goes in there. Sometimes these movies, they drag. They have the run of a day, daily feel. We get it. It just goes in. And the first act, I will agree, felt kind of like formulaic, generic, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't like, it didn't like, oh, here we go. Once we get introduced to Scarlet Witch, I feel like this movie starts picking up, and I think that's where Raimi really shines. From then on out, his footprint is all over this film. I mean, God, I was like, wow, this is the best directed MCU movie since Volume 2. Like, I was just stunned about it.
Wow. You put Volume 2, not even Black Panther.
Volume 2 has some better camera work.
Damn, okay.
That's crazy.
Black Panther has some shaky CGI and some generic
that's
stuff.
true. That CGI in the third act
The
was
CGI
rough.
was
that
why
CGI
it
in the
was
third
bad.
act is pretty rough. It's Black Panther. Okay.
But yeah, Luke, your thoughts on like the first act? Anything stand out? Where was your head at this point in the movie? Because you said you weren't really that hyped going into this, which I didn't expect to hear from you.
Well, during the first act, my head was in the clouds because I had just seen an amazing Top Gun Maverick preview.
Don't forget, we finally got to look. It's real. Avatar, the way of water.
Avatar.
It's actually happening.
And that
amazing.
looks like a great time.
Years later, it's finally
Tom
happening.
Tom Cruise doing the things like, I'm gonna shoot you down. No. But yeah, as soon as it started, I'm like, okay, this is gonna be over like that. Like, it was so fast. But I thought, okay, this is gonna be classic MCU. Oh, it's cool opening scene, cool visuals, and then we get the classic man in New York, but it's the MCU.
So it's really Cleveland.
I guess so.
Or Atlanta, wherever they're shooting it.
Um,
I think they were shooting some of their movies in Australia, but
I saw so much Australia. I saw Finland. I saw New Zealand. I saw anywhere but United States.
Anywhere but New York. I think the most offensive one, though, is Homecoming, where they are clearly, it is so obviously Atlanta, Georgia, but they're like, oh, it's New York. I'm like, that is not New York. I'm like, I've never seen a single stretch of buildings in New York that look anything like that movie.
Yeah, I was just kind of trying to settle into it. Okay, we're gonna do a bit of Doctor Strange, Christine stuff in this. Okay, oh, and there's the big monster. Here we go. Story starting, and then they got to explaining the rules of everything. Like, dreams are actually us in parallel universes. I think it's actually pretty
Which
cool theory.
explains so much.
So
much.
at the moment, there's a version of me going through Mordor to destroy the One Ring because that's a dream I had. But yeah, and then as soon as Wanda came in, I was like, okay, oh, she's just a villain straight up. There's no build up to that. She's like, boom, I'm angry now.
I seen that complaint thrown around about that. Is the whole, it kind of feels like it undermines WandaVision.
Nah, I disagree.
Well, I mean, she did hold up that town hostage.
I'm sorry. Anybody who says that, I'm like, I think that's a perfect natural transition to her character from WandaVision.
And she
If anything, for the first time, I'm glad I wasted my winter watching that show.
Yeah, exactly. And also think about it this way too. It's the first time that we've actually seen a payoff for like a character getting away scot-free with no consequences. It's like, okay, you know, Marvel's always let its heroes get away for scot-free without consequences. May as well start to make them the villains. And we've been waiting for like the Scarlet Witch, like the evil Scarlet Witch arc for I feel like a while now. And I guess the biggest source of I feel like the biggest complaint that I had about the end of WandaVision is like, okay, so we're not committing to whether she's evil or not. They're just kind of like she's just gonna go off and do this. And like, I was definitely a big fan of like, okay, if there's one thing that we can actually get paid off from WandaVision, it's that she's officially evil now. But like, my thoughts coming out of the first act where I'm like, I guess just my surprise was the simplicity of it, which I guess is kind of confusing. But considering the fact that we've kind of been conditioned to expect so many different crazy, nutso visual things with Marvel now, that I guess I was surprised by how, I guess, simple and transparent it is. Like you get that opening action sequence, and even though it's moving on like a fast forwarded pace, it surprisingly doesn't bother me. It's pretty obvious that we're watching a different version of Strange, while it doesn't totally make sense, the logistics of the setup, it's just fast enough and it gets you into the action going. It establishes the stakes pretty well. And by the time we get to the giant monsters, I'm like, okay, so we're just getting back to like some old fashioned giant monster fighting. It was fun. It was enough to get me into it. And like you were saying, Matt, once they get to the Scarlet Witch of it all, that's where the movie really kicks off, because I think probably my favorite part is the fact that they don't waste any time at all. Like I thought that there was like going to be like this extended sequence where they bring her to Chavez, and then Strange realizes that he messed up, and I thought there were going to be the whole, oh, now I have to make up to Chavez because now she's going to think I'm evil for it. And I thought that we were going to do all that like stupidity that usually that like pisses me off. And no, instead we just immediately got to, oh yeah, Wanda just straight up coming out and saying I'm evil now, and Elizabeth Olsen just full on taking off the blinders. Like, can we just talk about Elizabeth Olsen for a second? How fucking good she is in this movie. Oh my God. Like, I don't be wrong. I have been batting at 100 for Wanda since the minute she was introduced in 2015 in Age of Ultron with that god-awful accent that she was doing. And she's progressively lost the accent since, but she brought it back now. And I have been defending her since day one. Everyone's like, oh, she sucks. Oh, she can't do anything. Oh, the only thing she can do is like, look out for Vision. I'm like, guys, all of this is necessary building blocks to what will hopefully be one of the greatest heel turns we have ever seen in movies. And we finally got it. So I just feel personal validation for that alone. But Elizabeth Olsen is just finally getting to unleash the true inner villain that I feel like she's always had, but has really never gotten a chance to tap into because she's kind of always been forced to play like kind of, the meek, like hapless, like, oh, I've got to, for lack of better words, she's been the rogue of the MCU, where she's constantly having to like play down just how powerful she is because she's like, oh no, if I like get out of control, who knows what could happen, and the whole WandaVision of it all, I think was the first real demonstration of just what like her emotional state was capable of being. And the one thing I will say, if there's one flaw that I had, it's that I don't necessarily think they did a good enough job of tapping into the idea of the fact that the Scarlet Witch is supposed to be this completely separate persona that is essentially taking over Wanda. I feel like the only scene that really hinted at that was the scene where Professor X went into her mind in order to try and free her. But God damn it, is she just eating this scenery up? Like she's got the accent back. She's doing like this playful like cat's purr. She's like, oh, I'm not really evil. I'm just doing what a mother would do. Like knowing what she's doing is wrong, but knowing that she's also got like a strong enough validation for it. And I know that there are going to be people that have problems with that because it's like, oh, like the Marvel starting to have an opposite of a villain problem that they're like kind of like embellishing their villains and all that. But I don't know. I was just having so much fun watching her. She was easily like the most watchable part for me this entire time. And that's before we even get to the Illuminati stretch and how she wrecked shop there,
Right.
Yeah, so before we get into that stretch, I'll say about Elizabeth Olsen's portrayal of Wanda in this movie. I think she was absolutely phenomenal. I wouldn't say it's like the ultimate heel turn of all heel turns, but I thought it was really well done. I genuinely enjoyed this arc. I think WandaVision now feels like required viewing and less of a cash grab, which I'm so happy to justify, just because I think like an issue with this film is something that speaks to a larger problem, which is the marketing and the way that they know they have us, and so they force these monetary things on us, like getting a Disney Plus subscription to see something a quarter, and like spoiling a whole movie and thinking that's okay. And so it just felt nice to justify like, cool, there's still filmmaking, even if the corporatism somehow seems to seep its way into every aspect of every movie as we inch further down this MCU journey. Because I thought I was very impressed with the way she was really separating the two roles, right? Like she really got cast in two roles. She got cast as Wanda, and then she also got cast as a Scarlet Witch. And we finally really got to see the Scarlet Witch at the end of WandaVision, but it was still sort of in that merging where the two are coming together, where she's losing that Wanda personality but there was still a little Wanda in her, and now she really was able to separate it, and it was awesome to see, like that scene where Strange comes to her and he almost gets fooled, and then he realizes, oh no, this is magic. That was brilliant because they got me. I was like, oh wow, okay, so there were no consequences with WandaVision, and I was very annoyed about what I spent doing with my winter. Not that the weekly recaps weren't fun, but watching the show wasn't. And so then they tricked me, and I thought it was really, I was like, wow, this is a great performance from Elizabeth Olsen here, something I didn't expect her to be able to do, but she did. And the Scarlet Witch was menacing. She was scary and very powerful, and I hope that, I mean, I know she's still alive because there's no way a building kills a spellcaster who can simultaneously take down the Sorcerer Supreme, Strange, and an army of wizards. Like in what was that action sequence when the base fell in the beginning? That must have been like a total of 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took her like what?
Yeah, it comes in. They
5
got
minutes
this whole
to
thing
take him down.
The Shang-Chi set piece kind of look like they brought some
Yeah,
come on,
exactly.
Disney. Come on,
Exactly. Yeah, they're getting a little lazy with their studios there.
But yeah, no, Dom, I think I heard John Campea say it's trendy now to give a nod to the comic book films at the Oscars for like a nomination or two or three. I
Yeah.
don't know if supporting actor would be something that they would go as far as to do, but if there was ever one, I could agree in saying that, yeah, I think Elizabeth Olsen deserves at least a nod for this, because I felt
100%.
her two roles were so separate, but each so vital to the movie.
Yes.
And when she was acting with herself, that was actually brilliant. As much
Yeah.
as I hate those stupid kid actors, I think they suck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He was great.
everyone that I've talked to was like not a fan of those kid actors.
Kid actors being kid actors.
Which is
What
crazy
can you
because
do?
again, you want to talk about more setup. I'm telling you, man, this is what like we have gotten a Young Avengers setup in every single Marvel property that we've gotten since Endgame. You know, so
Yeah.
I
They're
just
going
want to
for
keep
it.
one of that. I just want to keep one of that there. I know the Young Avengers are kind of hit or miss because people have like when it comes to like teen superhero teams, it's pretty much like the Teen Titans and Young Justice and like nobody else wants up. But I'm telling you, man, I mean, get rid of the bad kid actors, like get some like actually decent like young adult actors. We could actually have a pretty badass team here because all the setup is there, you know.
So the second act, I've heard mixed opinions about this. I've heard this is where we strike brilliance. I've heard this is where we come into problems. I'll save my opinions for last. We'll let our guest go first here, if that's all right with you, Dom.
100%. Yeah.
Matt, why don't you take this one off? We'll just go around in a nice circle here.
I'll be honest, man. The whole entire movie felt like one act. If I'm being honest, was just the pacing. So where does the second act really begin?
I mean, I would
Probably, like-
say you go for it, Dom.
I was gonna say probably when Wanda begins the attack on Kamar-Taj. That's when it begins for me.
Okay.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was fine. I think this is where the people are gonna get pissed off because the multiverse just maybe like someone in this room right now, the multiverse wasn't fully in madness. It wasn't fully in madness. They checked off some lists. Oh, we're in this one, we're in that one for a bit, and then we get to Earth 838. Right, I think that's where probably like
Yeah, that's
maybe
what they said. Which, by the way, I'm pretty sure that's not actually 838, but like that's Marvel just playing fast and loose with the comics. So
yeah, and then you get the Bruce Campbell stuff. Shout out to Bruce Campbell, that was dope. I like
Yeah,
the
No one
end
cheered
credits
in our
too.
theater.
Yeah,
Absolute
I was-
casuals.
yeah, you just had
That's
all the
really-
morons cheering for Krasinski and Patrick Stewart, but nobody was cheering
People
for
were going
friggin'
loud for Bruce. Yeah,
Bruce Campbell. Wow, I was
No
like,
one knew who he was.
I was like, that's that. I'm like, that is some shameful shit right there.
yeah, definitely. But no, that's where the meat and potatoes. And there was like so much exposition, expediting just to set up the stakes of the movie, and it just kept it interesting. I like Raimi's editing was just so amazing. He made it look like a comic book. He had some like metal music in the background. I'm like, and then they were like playing
That
no
was
score.
cool. That was cool.
I was like, this is pretty rad. Like it was visually sounding different, distinct from a lot of MCU movies that we got. And I was telling myself, the second act started becoming more Raimi, third act really Raimi. I was
Yeah.
like, is this too niche for the MCU audience? Is this too much? Is this like, am I like the only one who watched
It's
Evil
not
Dead trilogy, Drag Me to Hell? Is this
man.
is this like turning off? Is this the main problem of the movie? Is it too much Raimi, less MCU? Because I really feel like they threw away the playbook. I think they
it's
threw
not
away the
enough
playbook in
Raimi.
this film. I think it still has the MCU stuff, right? But it's overpowered by Raimi a lot. I mean, it's pretty surprising how much they let him play ball here.
All right, Luke, what's your take on that?
I don't think there's enough Raimi. Like people are saying, "Oh wow, this is amazing," but I think yes, you definitely have great moments of Raiminess, but it's far overshadowed by the writing and how everything's played out. I think there's a great movie in here, and it's trying to break out, but it's blocked by the fact that it's an MCU film.
Interesting, Chris. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think I'm more with Luke than I am with Matt, but I think I honestly fall somewhere in the middle because I don't think the movie really got interesting until the second act, specifically that scene with the body horror moment where Wanda crawls out of the portal.
So good. That was some
so
shit.
dope.
That was some shit right out of like the Ring. Like was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a really cool moment there. And I was like, oh, it kind of like gave a chill down my spine. It was a little gross. It was a little creepy, and that's a feeling I've never had watching the MCU, which was really interesting and really cool. It makes me wish that whole Aquaman the Deep movie would come out. I would love to see what they would do with that. DC being a little less scripted in regards to like the way that they structure their universe, but I really enjoyed it because I think like when you have magic, mysticism, witches, there's inherently something evil there to begin with.
Yeah.
There's always the dark side of magic since it's a tale as old as time. I mean, Tolkien, Rowling, Lovecraft, whoever you want to look at, those are all different decades and eras, they all have the good and evil side of magic. So it's something you want to play around with. And with that being said, I think, yeah, it wasn't necessarily an MCU movie or a Raimi film for me, and that's what I liked about it. But that's also, I think, my ultimate sentiment agrees with Luke, where I think that is what held it back. I don't think that the short runtime actually was a hindrance. I hear a lot of people talking about that. To me, it was refreshing to go into an MCU movie and not leave the theater with bags under my eyes, being exhausted. Not that I never have fun, I do, but it was nice to like leave and
Shang-Chi
actually,
and Eternals.
yeah, exactly. It was nice to like, we trimmed some of the
Eternals was
fat and we
good.
had a nice fun ride that kept it going the whole way through. But yeah, ultimately, I wish we either picked one side of the aisle and fell into it. Like I wish we either went traditional formulaic or we went Raimi going fully off the rails. I just felt like this is where the voice of the film should have been established. I thought the first act was actually perfect for being so vague. It was a nice little way to hand off the torch to the second act, but I just felt like we kind of left some stuff there on the floor. And with that, the direction, I mean, like where the story's progressing and how it was going to progress, it felt a little severed and not connected, but it was still fun. It was fun, I think, too, because there was so much new stuff going on for the MCU. But I don't know.
Were you trying to make a Severance reference there, Chris?
I wasn't, but I guess it might have worked.
Yeah, it kind of came out as that. Yeah.
What do you think, Dom?
Here's my thing on the second act. I am both tremendously a fan of the second act while at the same time being the most confused, because this is easily the section you could tell where they had the most amount hit the cutting room floor for this one. Because you could probably tell this is the one where the actual multiversal aspect was supposed to kick in. I have a feeling that there was supposed to be a lot more than just them bouncing through all the different universes and having all the different fun with all the CG and all the different shapes and everything, with the color verse and then the Savage Land verse and the Looney Tunes and all that stuff was great. But it's when they get to the Illuminati section that is both simultaneously my favorite section of the movie and the most problematic section of the movie. It's my favorite section of the movie because Raimi basically is kind of sticking up an FU to like the traditionalist MCU sense, because that's probably the most traditional MCU. It's got the cameos, it's got the setup for future movies, it's got all the pristine, it's got the fan cheering moments, with the dumb Marvel fans cheering behind me. It made me so mad. Like I've always been like that guy that was like cheering with the rest of the theater. But I guess the difference being is that before it was always like collectively a group thing whenever they cheered, but now whenever they have the fan insert moments, the problem is it's always like moments in the movie where they were like actually characters talking and expositing dialogue. So it's like I actually want to hear what they're saying because I can tell that it's going to be important stuff, and I have these morons cheering behind me, and I'm like, okay, so this is why people don't want to go to movie theaters anymore. Okay, that makes sense. So my whole thing with it was, I'm like, okay, this is simultaneously the most rushed section of the movie, but the most fascinating section of the movie. I don't necessarily know if it's good or not. The cameos, my problem with the cameos is I figured them out because, again, I'm not going to not spoil them for myself, because I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to be like, oh, what are those guys? I like spoiling shit for myself. Get over it. What's it called? So I knew about Captain Carter. I knew about Lashana Lynch. And the biggest surprise for me, it was not Krasinski or Patrick Stewart, is the fact that, wow, they actually brought back Black Bolt from that garbage-ass Inhumans ABC TV show. That was the biggest surprise for me. I'm
he
like,
got
wow,
no cheers.
Marvel really is just like going for it, because they're like, okay, they're like, look, we screwed over all the guys that were in that show. We had this guy Anson Mount who's on Star Trek now. That was unfortunately Ewan Rand's first job post Game of Thrones as Maximus in that show. They're like, okay, we got to throw some kind of redemption arc for these guys. My biggest problem with that section was, of course, because it was the most generic section of the thing, where it's like Doctor Strange is trying to warn these guys, and also this is the only section where we bring back Mordo too. I'll get to that in a bit, but where Doctor Strange is trying to warn them, look, there is a very real threat. They're like, the Scarlet Witch is this thing. She's after this girl. This is a very real threat that you guys are focusing on. And of course, the Illuminati have to do that generic ass movie thing where they're like, oh, we know the Scarlet Witch is a threat, but she's not as big a threat as you, and then they tell them the truth about, like, their variation of Strange, and like they have this whole cockamamie plan where it's like, oh, is Strange evil now? And they're trying to like have this like stupid moral debate about, and I'm like, okay, like these guys are supposed to be the Illuminati. I'm like, get these guys the fuck out of here. These guys are like nothing but an excuse as to demonstrate how just useless the Illuminati are. I've never liked them as a team. They kind of, for me, go against the whole idea of what Marvel think. The Illuminati for me have always been kind of more of like something along the lines of like a DC construction. The difference being is that in DC they would be run by a character like Batman, who actually like is semi-competent. You have Professor X, Mr. Fantastic, Iron Man, Black Bolt, Namor, who can never seem to decide whether he's a good guy or a bad guy, you know, like he's constantly just like doing whatever he wants, which is why he's kind of the best of them. And then you have this group of jokers here that are like trying to pass some moral standing. And I'm like, okay, Wanda just needs to come in and dust all these guys. And then she does. And that's when the movie just kicked up into high gear for me, because I'm sorry, and I said this to all my friends, I'm like, the minute where Wanda dream walks into her, like that version of her character and just comes in and toasts the Illuminati, that was to me, Matt, where Raimi gets to go full Raimi to all of his PG-13 extent, because I'm like, never before have I been so simultaneously let down by a movie and then just immediately like elated by just the movie blatantly going out of its way. Oh, you thought you were going to get this? Here's this instead. And it was just, I don't know, there was just something so satisfying about seeing Black Bolt literally blow his own brains out like a moron. Mr. Fantastic turned into string cheese. Captain Carter getting sliced in half with her own shield with the close-up on her face being like, oh. And of course, it's so hilarious to me because they do the same thing with Lashana Lynch that she almost tried to do with that they did with her in James Bond, where they almost have her in as like, you know, she's like, oh, I'm the strong female insert that's gonna, you know, show all of these guys, you know, what's what, and I'm gonna be cocky as hell. Then she immediately gets showed up and dies as a result of it. Like that, not even like in a cool way. Like at the very least,
that was the worst death.
No, but that's what I'm saying. The other four got cool deaths at the very least, you know, like even the Professor X death was pretty cool, you know. But the way that she just gets crushed by a statue, I'm like, wow, that's how they know. They just gave no fucks about that character, you know. And she was clearly the insert about superior Iron Man. So that's what I'll say about the second act of that movie, is that I went from being kind of confused as to why they weren't taking full advantage to being really disappointed by the Illuminati section, just how stupid and generic it got, especially because that's a section that we're also supposed to be super excited for, because that's where we got all the cameos, to just being immediately elated by just how easily Wanda took them off the board.
Yeah, that was nice. Oh, I'm sorry, Matt.
Let me just spit this out, and I think this is showing right here with this stream. That moment became the throne room in The Last Jedi. That was the Last Jedi moment. That's the moment where Snoke kills them, and then are the fans gonna love it? Are the fans gonna hate it? A lot of fans in that reaction, they said, a lot of them were saying, there's one moment in this movie that had me elated. I hated the scene. It's pretty obvious it was that scene for a lot of these people who watched it.
Yeah, but
I personally digged it. I digged it a lot.
I dug it. Yeah, I loved it. It was my favorite section. And I'll tell you why, Matt. I'll tell you what the difference is between this and the Snoke section of the scene, because the Snoke section of the scene was basically just like the Snoke section of the scene was an anti-payoff, you know? This was not a payoff sequence, you know, because the whole Snoke section of the scene was, it's like, okay, we want to find out who this character is. We want to know who this character is.
This is the big trying to be a risk, just to be a risk.
Exactly. It was a risk just to be a risk. There wasn't any storytelling purposes behind it. It was just kind of a, oh, okay, so all this investment we had in this character just goes away out the window. This one is so clearly set up because, like, this is a setup scene, because we know this is not going to be the last time we see Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic. This is not going to be the last time that we see Patrick Stewart as Professor X. It may very well be the last time that we see Anson Mount as Black Bolt, but hey, you know, I mean, there got to be some casualties in war, you know?
I gotta say, the biggest casualty for me about the Inhuman show flopping is just the way that they mistreated those lost actors. I'm talking about Ken Leung and Henry Ian Cusack.
Yeah, that's right.
You guys had great talent there, and you screwed it. But anyways, I thought it was great how Sam Raimi kind of said, screw you. I know you have a formula. Guess what, guys? These cameos are really stepping on my groove right now. So I'm going to get them out of here, because this is a multiverse. They can die, and they can still make you money later on. But please, let me just get over with this so I can get back to the movie I want to make. That was awesome. Yeah. It almost felt like Scorsese got a sleeper agent in the MCU somehow. But I mean, I don't know. Point in case, I think fun second act, nothing groundbreaking, but it could have been if we weren't torn between the MCU's identity and directors always naturally having their own identity.
They're mingling in the middle.
Yeah, so coming out of the middle into the last act here, the big shebang, if you will. I don't know. I felt like if there was a point in the movie where I got a little sleepy, it was here, but then they quickly locked me back in and woke me up, because I thought it got real strong towards the end. It was fun. I mean, I think what was more compelling, though, wasn't Doctor Strange. It was Wanda and her emotional ride and her journey, and Elizabeth Olsen just stealing every scene she was in. I thought that really is what kind of made me feel like, nice, we're hitting like an emotional climax in a Marvel film. We're 2 for 2 now. And so I don't know. I just think it could have been stronger, but at the end of the day, I didn't expect this, where it seems like a lot of people did in the zeitgeist, to be like a top 10 MCU film, hell, even maybe top 5. I just wanted to have a fun night, and I got that out of it. But I feel bad for the people who put all their eggs in this basket, who wanted this to be like, we're going to get No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness back to back. Like, I remember hearing that stuff, and I was like, I'll see it when it happens. But I've never been that fully invested in the MCU, So I thought it hit all the beats. They have a formula. They know how to leave nothing on the cutting room floor at this point. But I do think also we're starting to see, at least in my theater, jokes fall flat. People not necessarily freak out. No one freaked out when Krasinski, Campbell, or even the legend Patrick Stewart popped up on. It was a sold out house. We went to an 8:30 showing.
Crowd.
They even went out of their way and even threw in the original '90s X-Men theme music there.
They did, yeah. The cartoon, right? That's what that was. Mm-hmm. But I thought I vaguely remembered that. But I was the only one. I was like, oh shit. I turned to the person I was with. I was like, yo, so they actually did it. He's like, and then my friend says, yeah, did you not see the trailers? I said, no. And that was so
smart
telling.
Man. Yeah.
But anyways, what are your guys' thoughts about like
what's Luke's thoughts on the whole Illuminati? I think the turning point.
Oh yes, please. Sorry, Luke.
Let's talk about the cheering for a second. I'll admit I cheered because I'm just like, these things come every once in like a year. So I thought, I'll just be part of it. I cheered for Krasinski and Stewart, even though I knew they were going to be in the movie. But my crowd, they went nuts. They were cheering for the Thor Love and Thunder trailer. They were cheering when Wanda first showed up on screen. I'm like, you knew she was in the movie. Captain Carter got like Andrew Garfield level noise.
Why?
That sounds fun, man.
I have no idea.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Captain Carter because I love Haley Atwell, but like, I'm like, damn. I didn't realize What If had that many fans.
Oh yeah, when it turned out that that's just the only cameos that we get, I was a little disappointed, but I was like, okay. We're not getting Tom Cruise. We're not getting Tom Cruise.
They could have easily inserted 2 more cameos that I had an idea for.
I'll chalk that up to cutting room floor. Because I know for a fact there were original plans for Loki to be in this movie as well, and that hit the cutting room floor.
I always track these Marvel movies. I know that some of these characters and the whole plot of this movie was back in 2020, right before the pandemic hit. But this is the most interesting track record of an MCU movie I have ever seen. They have been in negotiations for this actor, that actor. Maybe they have a deal with that actor. We don't know. A lot of stuff got cut. Of course, Sam Raimi coming in was huge. I'm really intrigued to in 5-10 years talk about this movie. It's like what got cut. Is there a Raimi cut out there? Because he did say that he cut out 30 minutes of the film. A negative for me, I could have used him maybe like good 20 minutes more.
I'll say like 10. I feel like 20 would have been too much. I'll give you 10. We
can be in the middle at 15.
All right. That sounds good. I'm with you there. That sounds good. But real quick, do you know any specifics of any actors that they were specifically negotiating with, or no, just rumors?
Tom Cruise, Hugh Jackman.
Okay.
Before Chadwick, I think he would have been in it before the passing.
Okay.
There's a couple more in there too.
Reynolds?
I think Reynolds. I think Casey Grammer's Beast was also going to be in it.
Okay. Kelsey Grammer's Beast. Yo, I would have taken Kelsey Grammer's Beast over Lashana Lynch's Captain Marvel just doing it.
Yeah, it was fluctuating. I was like, wow, this is what's going on. So
I'm sure we'll see those in the future.
Yeah. I think Feige needs to get those negotiation going on right now, because Tobey Maguire clearly watching No Way Home. He signed last minute. He was there. He needs to get him going, especially guys like Tom Cruise, because Tom Cruise is gonna play ball with him. How much I need. I don't need no Iron Man suit. You need to see Tom Cruise and my big armor with my small body. Still make me look big, Feige. But
well, we know too much about the actors behind the scenes. Yeah, but Luke, did you have anything more to say there?
Well, the cameos, I don't even know what to think of them when I watched them all. I'm like, oh, these are just incompetent fools who can't really do much. I was left a little confused. I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it. You're doing it to build up Wanda, but it was kind of just like, okay, So I guess Wanda is really that strong.
They are supposed to be the best, most intelligent
and
Marvel comic characters.
They're not.
Yeah, and they're not, because Mr. Fantastic literally just tells her how Black Bolt's powers work, and it's like,
but they're ignorant. They're ignorant. All those characters in the comics are very ignorant. So I think they got them right. I think they checked it down and so they use that an advantage to like.
Oh, those characters are ignorant in the comics, so they got him right. Wow.
They got him right. Reed Richards is neglecting his family. All that stuff. Professor X is an asshole to those kids. So they got him on the nail.
We're gonna get the Mr. Fantastic movie, and it's gonna be the incredible. It's really gonna be the Incredibles. It's gonna be another midlife crisis movie about it. He's constantly trying to get away from his kids and his wife.
This was the excuse of them trying to give us a character who's not morally great, not charismatic, and then once you get him, he's gonna start acting like Mr. Incredible, and
which is funny because the versions of Mr. Fantastic, because what you're describing sounds way more like the versions of Hank Pym that I knew about in the comics rather than Mr.
Hank
Fantastic.
Pym he's definitely toned down.
But I guess that, but again, I guess that just goes to show like what Fantastic Four comics ever. Because I'll admit, my comics that I read growing like when I was in high school were the Ultimate comics, where they were like kind of all like they made all the Fantastic Fours like kind of young adults rather than like the Fantastic Four more traditionally like middle aged in comics. But I digress.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this was a fine third act. I think, again, Wanda steals the show. And unfortunately, it feels like there are so many story beats and traditional MCU isms that you need to hit in a finale for a film that I just feel like Sam Raimi kind of was struggling to keep his vision going that he tried to establish, the horror, the scary side of things, into the third act. Whereas if it was like a Sam Raimi standalone, I feel like we would have gone a little even more with the animism, bringing the dead body back to life and doing all that type of stuff. I mean, those big giant golems, those very like fantasy driven creatures really were just there to add muscle, but not actually do anything. What were they? I feel like Raimi wishes he could have explained that, but unfortunately didn't have the time to play with that or do anything with it. So I just feel like a lot of it was set design. But it sucks when characters become set design because characters are supposed to have, motion and action. And even if they are like big CG colossal monsters, at least give them a few things to do, or else what's the point? Wanda was menacing with or without her little bodyguards. And so I feel like this movie ultimately is trapped between two worlds, which I guess is a bit ironic. But, I think that's really who suffers from the multiverse is the movie itself, not being able to find an identity or a home, all in all. Because it was fine. It was fun. Like, I left really enjoying it. And I love the new thing that end credit scenes have been doing. You first had it with Spider-Man No Way Home, then you had it with the Batman, and then Morbius as well, where it's like, hey, idiot, why are you staying to watch the whole rest of this credits? Just leave. You're not getting anything anymore. We don't care about you. Leave. We got your money 2.5 hours ago. Now get out of the theater. We need to fill seats for another showtime.
The case of the Batman 3 hours ago.
Yeah, I love the middle finger we're getting because we are stupid as audience members, and they have us eating out of the palm of their hands. And now they're just like, I don't know. It's like a weird sort of like Stockholm.
I feel like that started with Homecoming.
Through.
I feel like that started with Homecoming with the Captain America bit at the end, and they've just been running gamut on us ever since.
It's great. I love it. I think it's because I love looking around and seeing like the normal moviegoer's disappointment or frustration. Like every time, that's it. Like I hear that every time. Like,
well, is that like, not enough?
I'm like, did you not just get the whole movie? But we're so spoiled, and
yeah,
I don't know. So that ultimately it was a fun ride. I can't justify why I enjoyed it as much as I did because so much of it fell flat. But I had fun, and that's where I'm at with this thing.
That is the greatest MCU take that you ever had. I really liked it. I don't really know why I liked it because I can't justify how good the movie is, but I had a fun ride with it, and I feel like I'm pretty much in the same boat. Only thing I wanted to touch on briefly before we got out of here is I did want to talk about Moon Knight for like a solid 5 seconds. I won't spoil anything as far as anything that goes into it, but the one thing I will say that was probably the most fascinating thing about Moon Knight, and Matt, I'm assuming you watched this. Luke, I don't know if you got a chance to finish it or not.
I did finish it.
Okay, so the most interesting thing for me that comes out of Moon Knight is the fact that there are no tie-ins with any other MCU properties. There's no characters. There's no cameos. There's not even a reference to anything. I don't even think
there is.
There is like two.
To the ancestral plane in Black Panther.
Okay, and what's the other one?
To the
GRC.
thing.
It's like a minor little thing in the back.
Blip relocation.
Okay, so things that are so small I wouldn't even recognize it. And that was probably the most fascinating because I think that's like the first MCU property like ever that like doesn't go out of its way to like blatantly reference stuff. You know, I won't go into the specifics of it because like it's the way the best that I can use to describe Moon Knight is that it's essentially Indiana Jones meets Identity in a straight, which is like one of the strangest mixes ever. You know, but fun fact, Identity also directed by a comic book director because that's directed by James Mangold. So it's a kind of little underrated movie from the early 2000s that starts off as like a mystery thriller and then turns into something completely different by the time you get to the third act. But I think it's good. Oscar Isaac's British accent is absolutely awful. It's one of the worst.
I think he knows it's awful.
I know it's intentionally awful, but that doesn't make it any better. It's one of the worst accents I've ever heard.
I like it though.
In anything. And you know, Ethan Hawke is great as the villain. F. Murray Abraham is just having fun as the voice of Khonshu. And yeah, it was fun. It's probably been my favorite of the Disney Plus shows since Loki. You know, not that that's saying much because the Disney Plus shows have really not been that good. They really haven't been.
This was definitely a refreshing week for the MCU. We got Moon Knight season finale, which it felt very MCU, but you gotta look at the show as a whole, and then you got Multiverse of Madness, which I feel like it was different, man. I feel like this was a little different. I really appreciate what they did with Raimi in this, because we hear all the time they're not giving these directors creative control. You know, Taika Waititi, he makes, you know, fun, thoughtful, cute experiences. James Gunn as well. Chloe Zhao likes to make boring movies. She made a boring movie. Sam Raimi likes to make these weird, campy, horror type movies. You know, so I think the Phase 4 has definitely been a experimental phase. Definitely, better or for worse.
Can I say, Matt, I totally agree with you on that. I'm actually enjoying Phase 4 for the first time just as much as I enjoyed Phase 2. That was previously my favorite phase up until now. Not that that's saying much again, but I'm having a fun time. Like I didn't even hate Morbius. I know we're talking Sony, but there's still the Marvel logo on that thing. Like it was funny, it was fine. Like it was, you know what I liked about it? I just like the darkness seeping in a little bit. I think that's what's always appealed to me. You can't see
anything that's going on in the movie.
Yeah, that's always appealed to me.
No from DC's book there.
True, that 1984 end scene in Shang-Chi. But I'll say this much, like I like the one thing I think the DCEU does right, and there's not much, trust me, and I'm a DC guy, is the darkness, like the humanity that they bring to their heroes and the flaws, and I like that we're starting to get a little bit more of that. It's cool, and I can't wait to watch Moon Knight. I'm actually going to start tonight, so I'll let you guys know what I think. But yeah, I don't know, man. I still, my closing thoughts on Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, the Acquisitions of Madness, corporate merger of madness, right?
That should have been the actual
title. That's a good title.
Should have been
the actual title.
I know, and I think that's why Feige's upset. But I'll just say, like, I had fun, but I don't know why, and that's a weird feeling, you know. And I talked it out for an hour now, and I still can't figure it out. But what about you guys? I don't know.
Yeah, Luke, give us your final. Luke, give us your final thoughts on Moon Knight and Acquisition of Madness.
on Moon Knight, I really enjoyed Moon Knight. I think maybe because my expectations were so low for a Disney Plus show, and then the finale delivered compared to most of them. I think Loki was the best finale until this one. Actually, they're pretty close. I want to see more of him. As for Multiverse of Slight Madness, you know, it's no Oz the Great and Powerful.
I don't think any of Raimi's movies are going to be quite Oz the Great and Powerful.
But yeah, I didn't quite have as much fun with it as you guys did. Of course, I will give it a rewatch, not in theaters. Marvel have enough money at this point. I'll go into it with an open mind again, with my expectations set. But for now, it's one of the lesser films of Phase 4. I think
out of 5?
It's a 3 out of 5.
Interesting.
Matt, right there with Shang-Chi and Black Widow.
Interesting. Okay, Matt, your final thoughts.
Listen, man, I think I'm gonna have to support because the theater was lit in Thursday night, but I did feel like a lot of people coming out. That's different. Maybe that's too different for me. It's not. It didn't feel like the formulaic food to me. I feel like it was a Raimi's like he saw them eating that food and he just slapped them in the face, say spit that out, don't eat that, and then give a little bit of his taste into the MCU form. This is a movie. The directing of this movie and just the risk I feel like they took visually, storytelling is the only way that the MCU is gonna evolve. Then playing with different genres. Really playing with different genres. Not saying that, oh, this feels like Die Hard. no, it doesn't feel like Die Hard. Hawkeye does not feel like that. Like, I don't know where people get that. They're just
Who said
they're just
that?
Who said
te-
that?
templates.
Oh my God.
They're just getting the color scheme right. They're just getting the look of it right, the
Barely.
setting of it right. But it doesn't feel nothing like it. I feel like this one does feel like a true horror blockbuster MCU PG-13. They really pushed the line here. This is kind of like our generation of the Temple of Doom for those little kids. I don't suggest little kids watching this, man. It got a little graphic.
Temple of Doom? Real?
Temple of Doom, yeah.
Temple of Doom is way more.
Yeah, to an extent. I mean,
Scary.
you didn't ever pull anyone's heart out in this movie, which I was I'm like, man, you ever crush Ultron's head, the Ultron bot's head in this one. So
For where we at in the world, especially with Disney PG-13, they push the line.
yeah, all right,
Push
I
the
can give you
Yeah,
that.
that's my probably my biggest problem with people and like reacting to this. Like, oh, this is a horror movie. No, it's not. This
Yeah,
has
but
horror
that's the case with
moments.
every
It had
MCU
horror
movie, though.
elements.
But-
Yeah, but that's the case
I
with
agree
every
you.
MCU movie.
But
You know, I'm still
I
hearing
want
that like,
them to
oh,
go
Ant-Man's
fully.
a heist movie. They're like, oh, Ant-Man's a heist movie. You know, I've been
Yeah.
hearing that garbage since 2015 with Ant-Man.
But
It's like, look, none of the MCU movies are genre movies. They're MCU movies. You know,
This feels like the most genre movie to me.
to an
me.
extent, I can understand where you're
Yeah.
coming from there, 100% for sure. Chris, I just realized. Oh, wait, real quick, Matt, out of 5.
4 stars.
Out of 5.
4
Got
stars.
it. All right, Chris, your star rating.
Yeah. Well, the last thing I just wanted to quickly comment on. Finally, the MCU has a respectable score, one that's
Yeah.
worth
Yeah.
listening to.
Yeah. Yeah,
Elfman.
Raimi brought back Danny Elfman, and man, he went to town on those electric guitars.
He really
That was
did.
dope.
Yeah.
He had
So
like a couple like 80s riffs there. I'm like, what the hell is going? I'm like, this is awesome. Where is this
Yeah.
coming from?
yeah, for me, this is like a middle of the road type film. I'm gonna go with a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I had a great time. I don't feel like I wasted money on the ticket, and it could have been worse. It has in the past. Anyways, what about you, Luke or Dom? Whoever wants to go up.
Yeah,
I actually got my ticket for free. I just remembered. So
Yeah, I was
guess
about to
that's
say,
even better.
I'm like, I have the Regal app still, so I don't really pay for movies if I see them in Regal anymore. But yeah, this was just fun. Like, look, the point being is that this is a superhero movie. The fact that like we are still putting this much thought and deliberation into something that are just supposed to be like kind of fun action set pieces and like occasional like references and Easter eggs to greater comic books. I feel like this is kind of what got back to that in a strange way. Yeah, obviously not all the plot semantics made sense, but to echo Matt's point, this is probably the most experimental and probably the most like kind of daring they've gotten as far as actually, be willing to dive into genre. I think that they actually like took a decent amount of their characters to some interesting places. I thought the visuals were the best that they've been in the MCU in a very, very long time. And yeah, like I said, it's just I had an absolute fun with it. The cameo squad, they all got wiped out like they should be. And yeah, I had fun with it. It was goofy, it was macabre, it was ridiculous. The actors kind of had some idea of what they were going for. I think Raimi coming in was probably like the best last minute director change that they've made for an MCU movie in a minute. So yeah, this is a 4 out of 5 for me, easily.
There you go. That's a podcast, fellas.
That
It was
is
great
a
hanging out with
podcast
everyone
indeed.
again.
Yeah, this is the most amount of fun that I've had on a podcast in a long time. So, guys, we hope that you will join us back next week when we will be doing our Star Wars themed podcast for the month. Chris, I know that I'm extending the invitation to you, obviously, but just so you know, Brando and I will be debating the metrics of the Star Wars prequels again and how they've kind of come back around in the public consciousness. I know you're busy, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Sunday morning, right?
Sunday morning. I'm just
Yeah,
throwing
I'll be
that out
there.
there as well. So just
I'll
keep
be
that
there.
in mind.
Sounds like a
So,
plan.
Yes, awesome. Matt, Luke, thank you guys for joining us. This is an absolute blast. Matt, I know we can always rely on you the most for MCU content. Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
You guys can go follow me at Basic Entertainment on YouTube. I have a bunch of stuff coming up. Also, too, on TikTok, Basic Entertain. This was so much fun, guys. Thanks for the invite once again, or me inviting myself. You already guys know, Kate Films. I'm here, so not really
Awesome.
a big surprise.
Luke, my Bayham partner in crime. Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
You can follow me at Luke_reviews on Instagram for great story posts. It's a lot of effort to make posts these days, and sometimes a story is just enough. But I do write on Letterboxd sometimes, which I
Awesome.
did for Doctor Strange.
Awesome. Yes. Well, please write more Letterboxd. If they're anything like your posts in your YouTube comments, like there needs to be more. There just needs to be more Luke in the world. That's all that I'll say.
There
Chris,
will be.
my ride or die, my podcast partner, we finally got you back for this one. Hopefully this won't be the last time that people will actually see you on the Sunday morning streams for a while. Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
Yeah, no, it was great to be back. Thank you again, Matt and Luke, longtime friends of the show and of the podcast. It's always a lot of fun, and Dom, you put together yet another banger. I hope the people appreciate it as much as we all do. And if you guys want more of us, you can follow me and everyone else at the places they just said, but you can follow me at Christian Ivanko anywhere that matters. That's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. It's Ivanko, spelled Evanko. I make music, I make podcasts, as you know, and other sort of creative things, and I'd love to see you there. I'd also love for you guys to follow my co-host. Dom, where can they find you, man?
At Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, but more importantly, follow us at the official Talking TV podcast across all platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Be sure to follow us if you're listening to us here on Twitch. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. I just put up another top 10 list that I've been working on for quite a while. I think that everyone is going to enjoy it very, very much so, because it is about a genre of movies that everybody watches now. So definitely be sure to check that out. Also, be sure to follow us on TikTok as well. We're on TikTok now at Talking TV on TikTok. I've been posting there pretty frequently as well. So be sure to follow us on all of that. We're still going strong. We're not stopping making content for you guys anytime soon. We've got a couple more first-time watch series in the works for you guys for later on in the year. But for myself, from Chris, from Matt, from Luke, we had an absolute blast reviewing the latest effort in the MCU. And as always, people, 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.